went looking for trouble. And boy, I found her. She's in love with herself. She likes the dark. Grey Wolf Studios.
How to pick a battery? Well, it just depends on what you want to do. LiPos cells have an average, or what they call a nominal charge of 3.7 volts per cell. So a 2-cell LiPo would be 7.4 volts total. A 4-cell LiPo, well, I'll go ahead and cover 3-cell, even though I don't have one in front of me. A 3-cell LiPo is 11.1 volts. A 4-cell is 4.8 volts. I forget right off the top of my head what a 5-cell is. 18.5 volts. Yeah. And a 6-cell is 22.2 volts. Now that's the nominal charges. The cells, when they're fully charged, actually go up to 4.2 volts per cell. So instead of 7.4 volts, when this battery is fully charged, it will actually be 8.4 volts instead of 7.4. And likewise with a 6-cell LiPo, a full charge would be 25.2 volts instead of 22.2 volts. Now, whenever you go up in voltage, you're going to increase the RPMs of your motor, which means your motor's going to run faster. It's going to be faster. The problem with that is the harder you or the faster you run it, the hotter the motor is going to run. Now, depending on how you have it geared and stuff like that, it might not adversely affect it. If you have it geared, if you have too big of a pinion gear on it, let's say, and you switch from using a 4-cell LiPo to a 6-cell LiPo, well, then your motor might start overheating. Now you can counter the extra heat created by the extra voltage by lowering your pinion or increasing the size of your spur, but that if you have to do that, it almost kind of defeats the purpose of bumping up to the extra voltage, unless you're specifically trying to get more low end acceleration. Then it might not be a bad idea. But in terms of picking a battery, basically what you want to do is you want to look at your motor and your ESC and figure out what the maximum cell size is that they can handle. Most 1/10 scale motors can handle up to 3S LiPo. They can handle a 2S or 3S LiPo. Your bigger 1/8 scale motors usually handle somewhere between 4 to 6 cell LiPos, depending on the motor, the kV rating. The lower the kV rating, usually the higher voltage it can take. But as you probably remember, if you watched my video on electrics, the lower the kV rating, the more torque, but the less top end speed that the top end RPMs that the motor has. So anyway, basically, you look at your motor and you look at your ESC and find out, well, what's the maximum cell that these can run. A lot of times what you'll find is it'll either be 3S max, a 4S max, or 6S max. Now there are some exceptions that, for like, there are a handful of motors I can think of that have like a 5S max, and there's a couple I can think of, generally in the mini size motors in the lower, that are just a 2-cell max. But typically you'll find it's either 3, 4, or 6 max. So it just really depends on what you want to do. If you're trying to get just, the most power you can get out of your motor, whether you're looking for torque or top end speed, then you want to put the highest cell battery that you can in there. However, if you're trying to run on a track, you're probably not going to want to max out the top end speed. So you may want to use a lower cell battery. For instance, if I was using my low Z8 buggy out on a track, the motor I have in it, well, I take that back. I've changed the motor. I now have a Tekin motor in it. I used to have the Mamba Monster Max ESC and the Castle 2200 kV motor in it. Now the Castle 2200 and the Mamba Monster Max can both handle up to 6S max, 6 cell maximum LiPo. So if I was to put a 6 cell LiPo in my low Z8 buggy when it had that setup in it, it would have been way too fast to run on a track. You would not be able to run clean lines on a track using that particular setup. What I found to work better was I actually went to a higher kV motor. I went to a Tekin 2650, and I dropped down from using a 6S pack to a 4S pack. Now, I did that for two reasons. One, because the buggy is it doesn't have as much top end speed now as what it did before, so it's more controllable on the track. And the 4 cell battery is lighter than the 6 cell battery, which helps with your handling and whatnot. So, it in terms of picking a battery, it just depends on it depends on a couple of things. One, what's the max you can put in it, and two, is the max going to be too much? It can be sometimes. If you're bashing, usually you can't ever have enough. Everybody usually gears their stuff and up to run at the maximum amount of power they can get out of it. But if you're racing, you might want to think about using higher kV motors with smaller cell count LiPos. Like I said, typically in 1/8 scale, you're going to see either a 4 cell or 6 cell max. And typically with 10 scale, you're going to see, typically you'll see a 3 cell max in your 10th scale stuff. That's really about all I can say about picking a battery. What suits you and works for you. Like I said, if you're bashing, just go for the biggest thing you can fit in it. That's also another thing to keep in mind too. You're going to want to measure the width and the length of your battery tray, and sometimes even the height. If it's like an enclosed battery tray, or you think you might have a problem with the battery with a really tall battery like the 6S hitting the the body when you put the body on, then you might even want to measure the height. But you definitely want to measure the length and the width to make sure your LiPo will fit in your battery tray. That's another thing to keep in mind when determining how to pick, what battery to pick. And batteries come in all shapes and sizes. Even if they're the same MAH value, even if they're the same C rating, and even if they're the same cell count, you can get they get them, and they come in all different sizes. Here's a couple of examples. These are a couple of different LiPos. These are 3-cell LiPos. They're both 3-cell, both made by the same company. They're both 2200 MAH, and they're both I want to say they're both like 8 or 11C. It doesn't actually say on the pack. But anyway, these are pretty low-end LiPo batteries, but I use these for my transmitters. I don't run my transmitters on AA's. I convert my transmitters to run on LiPos. Now, I have one, I have I have one charger, or I'm sorry, not charger. I have one transmitter, the FlySky GT3B, that has a long, fairly wide, and fairly shallow battery tray in it. And for that, I use this guy here. It's thin, it's long, and it's kind of wide. Now I have another transmitter, the FlySky TH9X, that I use for helicopters, that has a deeper tray in it, but it's not as wide and it's not quite as long as the other FlySky. So I use this particular one. As you can see, it's much thicker. It's a little bit shorter. And it's definitely only like 2/3 of the width of the other battery. So LiPos come in all shapes and sizes, even if they're the same ratings, and sometimes even when they're from the same companies. Um, but there's all kinds of different shapes and sizes of batteries. Here's another one that I throw at you guys. I'll just move these out of the way for a second. Here's another type of battery. This is actually called a saddle pack battery. This is a Genzace 2-cell, 4800 milliamp, 40C, or no, I'm sorry, 25C saddle pack. And basically, what a saddle pack is for is they're designed for racing. Typically, whenever you see a kit that only takes saddle packs, they're usually race designed kits. Now, there's a lot of race design kits that don't employ saddle packs, but some of them do. And basically, the idea usually is something along the lines of one pack sitting on one side of the drive line and another pack sitting on the other side. Let's just pretend that this is our drive line right here. One pack would sit on one side, one pack typically sits on the other side, and the idea is that it's supposed to help keep your kit balanced. And basically the way these work is you'll get an adapter that's basically like this. It has one positive, one negative, and then another black cable. And then there's a balance. This particular one has balance plug soldered into each of the main leads that goes to a balance plug here. But so essentially the way this works is you put the positive wire in one of the holes that's marked with a positive, and you put the negative wire in the opposite pack that has a negative symbol next to it, which is usually, if you flip them to where the holes are close to each other, it's usually the one that's the exact opposite side. And then essentially what you do with the remaining wire is you just bridge the other two connections like so. And then you have your, I use Dean's connectors, so you can put whatever connectors you want on here. I think these originally came with bullet connectors. I cut them off, put a Dean's. You put Traxxas, whatever connector you like to use on there, and then you use the balancing port to balance them. So anyway, that's another type of LiPo pack that you'll see is a saddle pack. Again, they come in all shapes and sizes. This is a 4-cell, 5000 milliamp hard pack Genzace. 2-cell soft pack, 5300 milliamp Genzace. This is the one that I use for my helicopters. This is a 1300 milliamp 3-cell Genzace. And I have a couple of others these are old. In fact, I really need to replace these, but these are also for my helicopters. These are 3-cell 12C 850 milliamp LiPos. These power my little 400 series helicopter. And then I have the other ones I showed you before for my transmitter. Now this little guy here, and I'll show you in contrast to the 6S battery. This little guy here is for, this is a 650 milliamp one cell 20C pack, and this is for my little micro helicopter that I have. And I actually have even smaller packs than this. I have some 450 milliamp hour packs that are maybe about the same size, but maybe only this long. They're really small. But so yeah, it's LiPos come in all shapes and sizes. They actually even come bigger than the 6S packs. They actually go all the way up to 12S packs that I know of. But typically, I believe the only place that you'll see a bigger than 6S pack is once you get up past 8th scale and you move to, say, 5th scale. Some of the 5th scale stuff out there runs on 7 or 8S packs. And then as far as I know, I think 8S is typically about the biggest you'll see in 5th scale. Now, I could be wrong about that because I don't do 5th scales. I don't have enough room to run them, and I don't have enough room in my hobby room to even work on them. But the biggest one I've ever seen was an 8 cell, and that was on a I want to say it was on a LoZ 5 that was converted, that somebody converted to electric back when they first came out. Or was it I can't remember if it was a LoZ 5 or an HPI Baja. I can't remember. It was one of the two. Like back when it first came out, somebody converted it from gas to electric. And I think I was reading, I think I saw that on like RC Car Action magazine Facebook page or something. I don't even remember where I saw it. But anyway, regardless of where the 5th scale batteries stop, I know like the 9, 10, 11, and 12 cell batteries, I know those are used for your bigger electric airplanes and helicopters. The really big ones, I don't know exactly what scale because I'm just getting into helicopters and I've never done planes. So, and the biggest helicopter I have is a 450 series helicopter.